Hey guys, what's going on? This is the first official video in CGverse, so hope you like it and let's get straight into it. So this is going to be a beginner-friendly tutorial for anyone that's coming to Blender and wants to learn about it. So I know you're very intimidated by this workspace. It is very big and it's very complex, and it will take a long time to master, but it can be done. So let's get straight into it. So this is what's called the viewport. So the viewport is when where you see what you're working with. Over there is the collection, and in the collection you're gonna have everything. So all the objects, cubes, lights, spheres, anything. Anything is gonna be there. Anything that's in the scene will be shown there. And then there is the object properties tab. We have a bunch of physics properties, animation properties, scene properties, and all that. Okay, so we're not going to take a look at that now. We're just going to take a look at the viewport and how to move around. So first, left clicking is to select objects. So you select them. Right click is, not right click, scroll wheel click. So you press the scroll wheel down and you move. That's to move. So you just drag around. If you hit shift scroll wheel click, you can move without pivoting around a certain point, you see. So that's very useful when you want to go like away from the object. Now you're here. Right click is to object properties. You can set the origin, which is the origin is this little point right here, so I can move it G. So if I grab it, I can move it around on the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. Or if I want to move it only on one axis, I press shift and the axis I don't want to move it on, and I can move it around. And click to set the object down, or right click to cancel the motion. So I can right click, it just resets it to the state that it was before I moved it. So the origin is this little point right here. I can right click it and set the origin to the 3D cursor. So now the origin is here. So now if I rotate it with R, you can rotate along the R axis, the Z axis, the X axis, and the Y axis. Or if you hit double R, you can move it around but this is more complicated. So you can see that the origin is in the 3D cursor, and this is the 3D cursor, that thing. So that thing, if you press shift S cursor to world origin, it snaps back to the origin. So the cube's origin is in the 3D cursor. So what happens if I move this far away? Right click, set origin, 3D cursor. It can rotate around the 3D cursor. So now now it's pivoting around the origin. It always scales, rotates, or does anything else around the origin. So where it is in relation to the origin. And now I can just Control Z to reverse all the actions I just did. So there. And the light, well, light lights everything. And if you go to rendered view, sorry, over here, by hitting Z render or Z solid, Z material preview, all that, So you can press Z and you switch to the render view. You can hit 0 if you have a numpad. If you don't, select the camera up here, and you go into the camera's view. All right, so that's a camera's view, and so you can go to the camera view, render image. So now it's gonna render the image with the light and all that. It won't show shadows because I don't have a shadow catcher, which I'll talk about in a sec. So I want to move the cube, so it's not into the ground. So what I do is G, Z, and if you haven't touched it at all, you can hit 1, and it'll snap right up to the complete center. So if I have moved it like there, I can't press 1 because it just moved it up 1 unit, but because I have moved it down, it won't work. So you need to hit G and then Z, and then you can just eyeball it You can eyeball it. You can press Alt, and I'll take you to the nearest orthographic view. So you can grab it on the Z-axis, and you press Shift to make it go slower, so you can get it more precise. All right, there it is. So now Shift A to bring up the add menu. So you can go like this and select anything, or you can go to add and mesh and all that. But I like to use Shift A. It's faster. And mesh and plane. There's cube. There's circle. There's UV sphere. There's even monkey. So now you can hit the plane and S to scale. You just scale it up, and now we have shadows. Look at that. So that's really cool when you're dealing with like realistic stuff. So now, if you can see, the cube is clipping out of the camera view. So how do I fix this? I can hit the camera, I can just hit the outline, or I can hit it over here in the collection view and just G and Z and just center it up. And now, if I render the image, now if I render the image, it's gonna have a shadow, right? So that's really cool. What I want to do now is I want to add more light. This is very boring because it's white light, white material, and white everything. So what I want to do is select the light, hit Alt, and I'll take me to the nearest orthographic view. Shift D, and just drag and click. Again, Shift D, drag and click. Okay, so if you can see now, it has 3 shadows. They're lighter because each one is canceling each other out. So now select one light, go over here into this panel, and select the light. Now in the color, you can select the color, and I'm gonna change it to red by dragging the white circle. This one I'm gonna change it to blue, and this one I'm gonna change it to green. So now it's more interesting. You see that? So render this image. Okay, so now that this has rendered, I can see it's way more interesting, but I want to do something else. If you want to compare images, you can go to the render, you can render the image, then go to slot over here and change it to slot 2, and now you can close this. So now I'm gonna change the render engine. So this is basically how the camera processes everything and how light bounces and how everything works. So go to the camera, render properties, and switch it from Eevee to cycles. And you can see it's gonna go all grainy, and even when you move around it's super grainy. This is because it's not real time. Cycles does not work in real time. What it does is it helps light to bounce. It actually allows it. Eevee doesn't even allow it. So you go into the camera point of view and hit the render image. This is gonna take longer because it renders out in tiles. So when you render out in tiles, you obviously have to go from one tile to one tile, one tile, and one tile. So I'll be back to you when it's done. Okay, so I'm back and it rendered. So as you can see, it's quite different. If you switch over to slot 1, you can see that slot 1 is way darker. The cube is dark, and that's because the light doesn't bounce. The light didn't bounce from the plane over to the cube, so there's no like reflections. In the cycles, which is slot 2 for me, it did bounce the light, which is way more realistic. So if you're going for realism, I think you should go with cycles, although it does require a much powerful computer because it renders out each frame as a tiled version. So this took 4 minutes to render, and Eevee took 7 seconds. Okay, so it's quite a difference. And cycles will do that for each frame. Obviously, you can speed this up by setting a maximum of light bounces that you want the scene to have, depending on how realistic you want it to look. So this has been it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and remember to subscribe so you don't miss an upload.